Hi everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and today we get to play with pip beads. So pip beads are this fun petal shape. They really lend themselves to flowers and leaves and anything kind of to get that circular shape. I'm going to be using two different colors of pips. The pips are 5 by 7 millimeter, and they are produced in the Czech Republic. I'm going to be using two different colors and really playing on this sample piece, actually making it even more dramatic. So for the sample piece, I use the lavender color and then the graphite color. I'm going to be using the Alabaster Pastel Lime, so we're using a lime color, and the Roman Rose. The Roman Rose almost has a yellowish greenish tint, so they're going to look really nice together. And we are going to play around with that patterning and coloring of the pips. It has 3 on the bottom for each of the flowers for the pips petal bracelet, and then 2 on the top. So as far as pips go, these come in a tube, and you actually don't use all that many. Per flower, we're using 10 pips. So you're going to get a fair amount of bracelets. So if you're using 2 tubes, you have enough to do 2 different bracelets. We're also going to be using an 8 millimeter bead down the middle. I have glass pearls here in the brown color in an 8. I'm going to be switching it up just for a little shine and color and using the cat's eye in light brown for this pip bracelet. For the 11-0 seed beads, which are going to go right here along the sides, I'm going to be using a really pretty light pink color, which is the Galvanized Apricot Gold in the 11-0, and this is a Miyuki seed bead. Number-wise, it's 1072L. Also, if you ever need any of these materials, there's links below in the show more to all of these as well. I'm going to switch it up a little bit from my sample piece, because I never like to do things exactly the same, and I'm going to run some 15-0s down the sides rather than the 11-0s. You can see I just have a really tiny collection here of them. 15-0s go a huge long way because there's so many in this little 9-gram tube. So I'm using the metallic dark bronze color. Good colors if you are looking to purchase 15-0s and you're not sure what color. Look at the bronzes, the golds, the silvers. They go a really long way, and crystal AB also. I'm also going to be using some Potomac crystal rondelles. They are a 3 by 4 millimeter rondelle. You could use 4 millimeter Swarovski rondelles or bicones in place of that. That's really not going to affect too much. Anything smaller than 4, your little pip flowers here are going to hit one another. I'm also going to close my project off. Sorry about that, folks. We live close to a hospital, and I would love a soundproof room, but it's just not going to happen. So anyway, I'm going to use a cut button in order to close everything off, and that's going to be my closure. And I've chosen this in the Aztec gold color, which is a nice soft gold. I'm working on a bead mat, which is a great investment. I have a yellow one here, and then I usually have a blue one handy in case you start working on your project and you're working with it and you can see better one than the other. I have a yellow usually and a blue on hand, or a light and dark color would work. I'm using 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and because of my coloring, even though I'm going through the crystal, I kind of went back and forth on white versus green. But in case I do see any thread, which this project you really don't, I'm going to use the green just to give it a nice even tone, since a lot of my colors of the pip and my round beads lend to green tones rather than the stark white. This is a 2-needle project, so you're going to be using 2 needles, and I have 2 size 10 pony needles that I'm working with. So I'm going to get started, and we're getting started really with the base layer here. So the base layer has 3 petals per side of pip, so 6 altogether. We're going to be working on the base layer and then coming back and adding our top layer, which has 2 flowers. So you have to decide at the start if you want to alternate your flower colors, or if you want all of one color to be at the top and all of one color to be at the bottom. Because this little sample piece that I made has all one color, or alternates colors, this other one I'm going to do all one color just so you can see it. So right away my mind goes to my pink, that Roman Rose on the top, and then the green on the bottom. So that's what I'm going to do. So you're going to dump out little piles of those. We're also going to be working with our 11-0 seed beads and your size 8 millimeter beads. So your 15-0s and your Potomac crystals can kind of sit off to the side for now. I want you to cut about 5 feet of your wildfire beading thread. To cut my beading thread, I usually use my slip and snip cutters. They give a nice cut. They're not like paper scissors where they're going to kind of bounce back. They're a nice sharp scissor. They're actually a camping scissor. And all I'm going to do is pull my 5 feet of cording off, take my scissors, open them up. There is some tension, and I'm just going to snip. Once I have that, I usually have a needle nose or a chain nose pliers kind of sitting by, handy, flat lows, anything will work. And what I'm going to do is just pinch down on that end. That's going to expand the thread there, and I'm going to thread my needle. So for this project, again, I'm using a size 10 needle, and I am going to have a needle on each end of my thread. I'm going to pull a tail through about 12 inches, put that needle in to my beading mat, come over to the other side and do the same thing. I also have handy a thread burner. The thread burner I usually use if I have to add thread and towards the end. You can also, instead of using the scissors, you can burn your ends of your thread as well. If you have trouble threading your needle, we do have large eye or wide eye beading needles. I'm just not a huge fan of them because they're rather flimsy. But some people love them. It's easier to thread them by far than it is to do these. But if you do that little trick where you bend or flatten it out with your pliers, nice flat pliers in there, it'll actually help a lot. So I have my piles here, my bottom color. Since I'm only using one color on the bottom, I just kept the pink in the tube. I have my 8mm and I have my 11/0 and my 2 needles ready to go. I'm going to pick up my button. You can either do a loop first or your button first. And just to decorate this button a little bit, I'm going to pick up 3 of my 11/0 seed beads, either needle, doesn't matter, and I'm going to let those drop down to the bottom of my thread to the middle of it. And then I'm going to take my needles and split them, one through one hole of my cup button, one through the other hole, coming out the back. And it's just going to have that little loop there. When I'm out the back end, I'm going to pick up 3 of my 11/0 seed beads and let those drop down next to my project. Now what I'm going to be doing is working with my 8mm. So this puts a flower right at the end. If you don't want a flower right at the end, you can pick up one of your Potomac crystals and go through that. I'm going to do a flower right at the end so the petals go right to the cup button. On the other side where my loop is, I may do a Potomac crystal before my loop. That way the flower is not right at the loop. But I think it would look pretty here for the loop. Actually, I'm going to add one more, so I have 4 beads on each side. It's funny, a lot of times I do these videos, I have my little sample piece that I kind of play with and do while I'm watching TV, and then it's fun to actually see it all come together because all I've done so far is about 1.5 inches. That being said, I forgot to mention you're going to use about 15 to 18 of your 8mm beads. And that being said, for every petal or for every flower, you're going to use 10 petals. So you're just going to times that by the number of beads that you use. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my 8mm on. I'm taking both of my needles together, putting them on, and letting them drop down next to those 11/0 seed beads. Again, that's going to create my clasp and closure. And because we are coming back and forth the bracelet, we'll have a chance to reinforce this. I never want to have just one thread going through. If you watched a lot of the videos, you probably get sick of me repeating a bunch of the same things again, but they are definitely the important things. So the pattern for the side, again, there's going to be 3 pips on each side. Those pips are going to be separated out by 11/0 beads. So it's going to be a pattern of 11/0, and then your pip, 11, pip, 11, and then your pip, followed by an 11. So 4 11s go on and 3 pip beads. You're going to let that fall down next to the side. Just kind of push your needle into the bead mat. On the other side, I'm going to do the same thing with my 11/0s and my pips. Sometimes the pips just don't want to be picked up on the bead mat. Oh, and of course, one of the first ones there, sometimes the coatings for all the Czech glass beads, if they have a coating on them, sometimes the holes get clogged up there. You just usually can poke it out with your needle. Happens a lot during manufacturing. It's tiny beads, and the tumbler doesn't always break that last little coating off. So I now have my 3 beads on with my 4 11/0s. And what we're going to be doing is we're going up through the 8/0 bead, or the 8/0 bead again. So my needle that's on the left here, I'm going to go through the 8, making sure I'm not getting attached there to my cup button. That puts 3 on this side. The needle that was hanging out also goes through the 8. You can see I'm not close down right now. I'm going to correct that and make sure that I am. If you have any pips too, this doesn't bother me. If you have any pips that have different shape, again, it's such small beads and such amazing production actually, but there is imperfections. It kind of makes it fun. Okay, once you have those, you can see I'm giving a lot of tension and a nice tight pull. Once I'm coming out of my 8/0s, I am going to put an 11/0 on either needle. And then, oh, I forgot I need to do my Potomac crystals, so you do want to have a couple of those sitting around. And they're going to be a little hard to see here on the clear mat, but I think these colors show up better on the yellow. I'm going to grab my needles together and go through one of the Potomac crystals. You might need to do this one at a time. Some holes are a little bit bigger than the other. So there's what the look is going to be. So you've got 2 11/0s, 1 on each needle, and then going through the Potomac crystal. Separate out the needles again, 1 on either side. Let that drop down. Now it's simply the same pattern over and over again. You do want to make sure to keep tension, pushing those down. It'll kind of lock in place once we do the top petals. But again, you're just going to grab an 8/0 or an 8mm bead. Sorry, I keep saying 8/0. 8mm bead. Let it drop down to your seed beads and your Potomac crystals. Give a nice tight pull. And then I'm going to separate the needles. I'm going to do the pattern of 3 pips that are separated by 11/0 seed beads, with 11/0 starting that pattern. Do that on the one side. Go back through the 8/0, 8mm. I will get that. Go back through the 8mm on the one side, then turn around, pick up the other needle, do the same pattern with your 3 pips and 4 seed beads. I'm really loving these colors together too. It's always the fun thing is after I kind of play with whatever I have sitting around and make sample pieces, I actually get to go into the 6,000 square foot bead store and actually pick colors. So it's kind of great. And I'm going back through the 8mm, give a nice tight pull, and that'll pull those petals in. And there you go. If you want your flowers to sit a little bit more separated, you can always add extra beads in the middle here. I want them almost to be over top of one another, kind of looking like a field of wildflowers. So I don't want them to sit apart. I went back and forth with that, just adding an individual 8mm bead in, but I chose to keep it close with that crystal and do a little pop. So I'm going to continue to do this the whole length of my bracelet. Again, you're going to have somewhere, because they do sit close and they bunch up just a tiny little bit, you are going to have somewhere between 13 and, if you have a really tiny wrist, 13 and probably about 16. I had originally said 15 to 18, but we're going to measure it out as we go. This also would be a great earring. So if you wanted to do just one, you would start out the same function and same way. It's always a good idea to do a bracelet, really reinforces, and it would be a pretty necklace as well because it's going to have that turn to it. So continue on adding the pips. You want to give yourself about a ½ inch at the end leeway that we're going to add the loop. And that way also, when it shrinks up a little bit, it's not going to be a huge deal. So just to show you now as I'm progressing, those leaves, don't be worried if they flop back and forth. When we add the next row, that's what's going to kind of keep them in place and keep them in check, keep them out, and keep them topped. So don't worry too much if they are flopping to one side or the other. I'm going to continue on. It looks like I'm going to need a total of 10 or 11 of my flowers, but I'm just continuing on with my pattern, just showing you exactly how it is. So the leaves are going to overlap a little bit of these petal beads in that green color. So I now have my 11 flowers on my string here, and that's going to give me about 6 3/4 wrist bracelet. It's a little bit bigger because it is going to shrink up just a tiny bit as we bring those leaves together. Earlier I had stated that 2 tubes would get you the bracelet. Your bottom color, whatever you do, you are going to need a second tube of, because I'm only left with 1 flower, which 12 or 13 is probably going to be about standard. Most of you guys, if you want a 7 or 7 1/4, are going to use 12 or 13 of your 8mm beads. So you do want to grab 2 tubes of whatever color you want to do your base. If you do want to switch it up, just pick 1 to grab a 3rd tube of, or mix up 4 colors. It can make it even more fun, like a wildflower field. So I'm at the end here adding my beads, and what I've done is I've added my 2 11/0 seed beads and my 1 Potomac crystal. I've then separated the needles and I started putting on my beads, but what I'm going to do is actually tuck in the 1 needle that I'm not using. I'm going to pick up the other needle that already has a bead on it, and we're going to make a loop for our cup button. I'm going to start this out with my 11/0 seed beads, and we're going to add enough beads that it's going to go right around my loop. This is usually about 28 11/0 seed beads. More, I think it's 34 is a good loop, I believe, or 32 for your 15/0s. But I have my beads on there, and I'm just going to keep going. This is always a great way to kind of clean up your mat. If you're going to close up one type of bead, we're still going to be using 11/0s for our top petals. You could also use another color of beads for the top as well if you wanted to do that and kind of separate it out a little bit. But once you have enough beads for your loop, you're going to come back down your Potomac crystal, come out your 11/0 seed bead that's on the other side of the crystal. Then with the needle on the other side that we haven't done anything with, we're going to reinforce this. So we're going to go up through all of our seed beads, come down through all of them and go through the Potomac crystal, and then come out the other seed bead. Because remember, you're putting a seed bead on each thread before you're doing your crystal bead. So I have my beads on, and I'm going to figure out which one it's coming out of, and I'm going to separate out those 2 needles. So 1 needle is going to be coming out of one of my 11/0s, 1 out the other. I'm going to push everything down. You can see the gaps that were created, and give nice tight pulls to get rid of those gaps so you don't have those gaps in your clasp enclosure. Now that we're coming out the seed beads here, we actually get to add the top. So I'm going to take those line beads, and I'm going to pour out my Roman rose here. And as I pour it out, I'm getting more excited to see the colors together. It really is going to be such a pretty thing having those 2 together. So we're going to pour out those little piles. We are done with our crystals at this point, and we are done with our 8mm. We're going to be using our 11/0 and our 15/0 beads. So you do want to make little piles of those, because again, we are going to be ready to kind of come back down the project. So I have my little piles, and we're going to get ready to go back towards the button clasp. So my pattern down the top is going to be a little bit different than the bottom, because I'm dropping down from 3 petals to 2 petals. My pattern now, as you can see here kind of on this little end piece, is going to be 2 seed beads, petal, 1 seed bead, petal, 2 seed beads. In the middle here above the 3rd petal, we're going to be linking that 11/0 seed bead that's in the middle, and we're going to be doing almost like a right angle weave or a ladder stitch that we're linking into that bead. So we're going to start here. We're coming out of those seed beads. Again, we're going to add 2 of our 11/0s. I'm going to add my first petal, and I'm going to add 1 11/0s. You can do this coming down the side with just 1 needle. You can do both. That's kind of up to you. Once I have those on, again, I'm going to go through the petal that's in the middle at the bottom. I'm going around in a circle, so my needle is going to be going towards my clasp, coming out that petal, and that pip's just going to kind of lay in there then. And then once my needle is out, I'm going to bring it through my seed bead, so that way my seed bead also lays down. So I'm not going to be coming back this way, because then you're going to see the thread. This time my needle is going to come through the seed bead, going towards the button end. That's going to link everything together, and that's how it's all going to sit so that those stay at the top. It was fun trying to kind of figure those out. So then after I do that little linking, I put on another one of my petals, 2 more of my 11 seed beads, and then I'm going to pick up that 11 before my Potomac crystal, go through my Potomac crystal, and out one of the 11 on the other side. That's why we put 2 crystals on either side of the Potomac crystal. So you can see that pretty flower starting to take shape. So that's with my right needle. Here with my left, I'll do it again for you guys. Coming out that 11 seed bead before the Potomac, or I'm sorry, after the Potomac crystal. Put on 2 seed beads, 2 of my 11 my pip here. I'm going to circle up through the middle pip on the bottom, so through that green one in the middle. Oops, my fault there, I forgot an 11 before my going through the pip. So sorry, 2 pip 11 through the pip bead, and then back down through the 11 towards my button. So when you go through the pip, you're going up towards the clasp. When you go through the 11 again, you're coming down towards, or I'm sorry, when you're going through the pip, up towards the loop, through the 11, down towards the clasp, and that just sits that in there. Then another pip goes on, 2 seed beads go on, through the Potomac crystal using the side 11 bead there, through the crystal, picking up the other side bead. So your needle and thread are always going to be coming out those 2 11 on the sides of the crystal. After each flower, like the base too, I'm going to give a nice tight pull to make sure that I don't see any extra thread in there, and to make sure then that my little blooming pip actually stays in place. Again, we're going to start that same pattern doing my 2 11s, my pip, my 1 11, linking in and spiraling through my bottom petal of that green pip, back through the 11 towards the button, and continuing on and just separating through those 11 seed beads on the side of the Potomac crystal. So I'm going to continue going down the line, doing that, adding my top beautiful Roman rose pips, 4 at a time, 2 on each petal. So I'm nearly done this row of my bracelet, adding my top pips, and it's coming along really, really nicely. I love the way that it looks. Except the annoying thing is I'm kind of out of thread. So I'm going to show you guys how to add thread. I have the thread coming out of the 11 seed beads close to my cat's eye. And what I'm going to do is actually take my needles off those 2 ends of thread. I'm going to take those 2 ends and I'm just literally going to tie them together. I'm doing a little sewer's knot there, right over left, left over right. I'm going to trim that down with my scissors, but I want to keep that there because I am going to get to the point where I go back with my burner, burn it down, and use a little super new glue as well. My new thread, I'm going to put my needles on, and then what I'm going to do with that new thread is actually kind of do a cheat. Because it's 2 needles, it makes it a little bit easier to do. And the way I'm going to cheat with it is come back to some seed beads before that crystal. So I'm not going to add it right there at that same point because I don't want too much of a balling up of the thread there. I don't want to see too many of my knots. I really hate knots, but I hate even more working with super long thread. If you don't want to have to add thread to this project, you may want to start off with about 6 or 7 feet. Now that I have my 2 needles on, so my knot is right here next to the cat's eye bead, I'm going to come back and I'm going to put my needles into the 11 seed beads that are before that Potomac crystal. I'm going to go through the Potomac crystal then, and it's getting a little bit tight, but we'll manage. And I'm going to go through on the other side too. I'm going to take that one through, get my whole end there. I'm going to go to the other one, take that through. And get my tail out of there as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, oops, I'm going to twist it around here first. I'm going to go through my 11O seed beads on either side, right where I had the knot. Pull that through that one, pull the other one through the other side of the 11O down here. Trying to pop that up there. And then once I have them out, these 11Os, then I can just continue on with my project as I was. So it makes it really easy to add thread and to conceal that thread. And now I'm right back to adding my top pips in my pattern, just like I did for all of the previous ones before. So at this point, I've gone through my whole bracelet here, adding my top layer. And as I do the last bead here, I've gotten it on the other side. On this side, I'm going to come back through, so I have my 2 seed beads on. After my petal, I'm going to come back and grab those original 4 beads that are hanging out here to go up to my clasp. This is going to allow me to reinforce my cup button here. If I can at the same time, I always try to grab some of those seed beads that are there, because I'm going to be going through the cup button, through the beads, down through the cup button on the other side. The one that I already kind of anchored in is coming up my cup button here. And I'm going to do the same thing coming down the opposite way here and coming out. So I'm going to be coming out the back of my cup button after having reinforced that cup button. So now I have 3 strands going through my cup button and going through that clasp area, which is going to reinforce that ending. So the last thing I'm going to do is kind of frame out my bead on the bottom. So when you look at it here on the top, my Potomac crystal is sitting right on top of that. I've chosen to do that with the dark metallic in a 15O. This sample piece here has 11 O's on the base, and I think it's a little bit big. It's a little bit too big in the middle, so I've switched to 15 O's. When I'm done reinforcing that clasp, I want to bring my needle and thread, and you can see I have it to the back side, so my green is showing. I'm going to bring my needle and thread through my 11O seed beads, and this time I'm going through the 8O bead. This whole row we're going to go through the 8O, or the 8mm, sorry. We're going to bring our needle out. I'm going to do the same thing with the other needle, going down on the other side of my clasp here. Might need to do a little wiggle there, and coming out. And again, all of this portion is just really for look. So if you would want to and you want to keep it light, you can stop at this point, but I like to kind of jazz up those Potomac crystals. So I'm going to keep my needle separated once they get out of the 8O seed bead. And all I'm going to do is literally run a line down of my 15 O's and then into the next 8. So I'm going to pick up 5 15 O's on one needle, and I'm going to go through my next 8mm bead. Again, that's just kind of, oops, sorry there, 7, not 5. I'm getting my odd count numbers confused. Oh, and I got stuck. So this is actually a good opportunity to show you guys what happens when you get stuck. So I got stuck because somewhere in the middle there is thread that I went underneath instead of over. So what I'm going to try to do is go back through. And I've gotten it stuck again. I can kind of see with that cording. I got it unstuck. I'm going to sew through one more time. If it doesn't come out, then I take my needle off. Make multiple attempts, and if you need to, just take off the needle. You can see sometimes I can see that warped thread there that I'm being caught by. I can go underneath. And then I'm ready to add those other 2. So 7 on, through my 8. And that's just going to pull that whole bracelet together. Here's where it does shrink up just a little tiny bit. I'm going to do my 7 on my other needle. And again, this is just a little bit just to reinforce, but it also frames out that Potomac crystal. And I'm going to do 7 and through the 8mm. When you flip over to the other side then, and you see the Potomac crystal, you're just going to see that little tiny seed bead backing. And again, I don't want it huge. I don't want to see a lot of it. I just want that little tiny backing so it looks like the crystal is not floating as much. So I'm going to continue down the back of the bracelet, adding in my 7 of my 15-0 seed beads right along the back, going through the 8mm, 15 more on each side, and continue on going. So showing here as I'm getting ready to finish my backing, as I do that back, it also kind of keeps my Potomac crystals from kind of twisting around, which is twisting one flower to the other. So it's going to keep my crystals in place, and it's going to keep my flowers. And you can just see that hint of dark underneath the crystals, which is what I was going for. Originally, I did 5 of my 11-0s, so that's where I had gotten the number 5. So if you do want to see them a little bit more, you can do 11-0s in there. When I'm looking at my bracelet now, what I want to do is coming out the end, and I'll turn over to the back so you can see that line of seed beads. What I'm going to do is just kind of decorate up that ending there, sort of in the same fashion. So instead of doing 7, I'm going to come out with 3 beads. And then instead of going through, or I'm sorry, really the odd numbers, 5 beads, I'm going to skip my Potomac crystal, and I'm going to reinforce my clasp. This is just with one side. If you want to, you could also do peyote stitch. You can do 2 11s and then, or I'm sorry, 2 15s, 1 15, 2, 1, 2, 1. If you know peyote, you'll know what I'm talking about. So you do a 2-drop every other with your 15-0s. If you have no idea what I'm saying, just ignore it. You can watch some of our other videos. We have one specifically on 2-drop peyote, so check those out. On the other side here, I'm going to do 5 of those 15-0s again. And you can see I didn't do it with this one. I only did it with that one thread. Then all I'm going to do to finish off my project is take those 2 ends of thread, the one that has the 7, and then the one that I haven't done anything with, and I'm going to tie them off. Give a nice tight pull. If you want to, you can even keep going with the layering. You could do a 3rd layer on top, especially if you're doing earring or a pendant. You can do that. You could trade this up. Instead of pips, you could use small petals. You can use a 6mm instead of an 8mm. Your spacing and everything is just going to be off a little bit. So you can see I'm switching my sides of my thread, doing square knots. Then I'm going to go in with my slip and snips. Oops, drop them. Trim down the threads. And there you have your bracelet. And it is reversible if you look at it, if you do 2 different colors. Again, the sample piece, which I think I'll do another one with this, I alternated. So I did top and bottom colors doing that as well. So I could wear it on the green side if I wanted to, which is just going to have the line of 15-0s. Or I could wear it on my pretty pink side, which I think I'm more likely to wear it. And you can see it did shrink up just the tiniest little bit when you add those 15s, or if you choose to add 11-0s as well. And the flower petals will just kind of float. The more you pull that bead when it's on top of the middle pip from the base row, that's going to determine how much play you have in your petals, if you want them to kind of move around or if you want them to stay stabilized. But adding those 15-0s at the end decorates behind the Potomac crystal, makes that stand out a little bit, and also keeps that bottom in line. All I'm going to do now is go back to my thread pieces. I'm going to add a little bit of glue where they are added and where they are cut, so it's just that one place there and that one place over here, a little bit off camera. So there's 2 places. I'm going to add a little super glue. I'm going to burn down my threads, but other than that, I am finished. Again, I think this would be a lovely necklace. So if you haven't not into bracelets so much, this would be a gorgeous, gorgeous necklace. I might even have to do a video on this as a necklace as well, but it's going to be the same technique. I would suggest towards the sides then, kind of spacing out and using something else, maybe sticking somewhere of the cat's eye back the sides, but it really would be such a pretty statement necklace. Also an idea, you can always basically make it into a necklace by adding another bracelet and doing 2 loops. That's going to be your method of your necklace. You could do 2 loops and then just connect it to whatever you wanted to. You can also always connect 3 bracelets together a lot of times. So if you do 3 bracelets, you can connect them together and you make a necklace. But anyway, this was really fun. This was my first opportunity to play with these fun pip beads. Hopefully you guys like this pip flower bracelet and make a couple. If you have any questions, just let us know. Post pictures on our Facebook page of your different projects. I love seeing the different colors and the different combos people use because I can only do so many at a time, especially because I have little kids in the stores and everything. So I love seeing the colors that you guys choose and the patterns that you choose as well. So thanks a lot so much for watching. If you guys get a chance, check out the rest of our YouTube videos. You can also see videos like this Poppin' Pips flower bracelet. And also you can go to our website and buy the materials. You can also visit one of our stores. We have stores in a lot of different areas. So check out, if you're driving for the summer on vacation, check out our PotomacBeads.com location page. And we'd love to see you at one of our actual retail locations making this or similar products. We also have classes in store that we'd be happy to teach you. And we'd be happy to get you any knowledge that you can have or you need from our friendly staff. So thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and have fun making this awesome pip bracelet.